Welcome to the show. As you all know, we've been talking about dating pool for those who've been following us and all the things that are entailed in that pool. Today we're talking about pocket depth. 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 Pocket depth. And all of the different things that relate to that as it relates to dating. Um, when we're going out, we want to be able to have a good time, right? As you're dating, you usually go into places, events, venues, restaurants, outings, and sometimes they're free, but they're not all free. As you're dating, you tend to, well, some of us tend to buy gifts for the people that we're dating. Everything costs money. Um, you need money to date unless you're planning to go on free dates all of the time. That's the bottom line. Um, we need money in life, food, shelter. That's the bottom line too. So you need money, period. Not only to for the necessities, but if you want to enjoy some of these pleasures, dating is not a necessity financially. I would imagine back in the fucking caveman days, you just grab somebody by their nuts if you liked them. You grab the lady by her titties. You take them out? Did you go sit by the rock and I don't know, hammer out a tool or something to impress the woman? Did you give a little pebbles, unusually shaped pebbles as gifts? I have no fucking idea. I'm just imagining, my environment with some shrubs around my waist and just trying to learn the earth, and I see this monkey booty that I like. Like, what am I gonna do? How do I show this person that, I'm capable? I can handle whatever comes our way in the way of food and shelter, which costs money. Pocket depth is not just about dating. You need money for food and shelter, whether you're living alone or whether you're living with roommates and a couple. I understand. Let me stop right now. There are exceptions to everything. There are people out here who don't need money to move. People who know how to walk like in a way where there's a red carpet always there for them. Those are the exceptions. We're not talking to you tonight, but we appreciate you too. We're talking about people who need to spend money. When you're meeting someone, a lot of times, during that dating season, you go over things all kind of related to classism, in my opinion. You talk about your dreams, your reality, your goals, what you like to do. These things alone, speak to some of what you can afford. If I say I like to go on a boat every weekend and jet ski, you're going to know I'm not that broke. If I tell you every weekend I just like to sit under a tree and draw, you're going to have no idea of how that relates to my pockets. That's the bottom line. But as we date people, we begin to discover things about them. And sometimes, unequal pockets can be a problem. So I think personally it's important somehow to get to this subject. A lot of people, I've discussed it with, some say it's too soon, blah, blah, blah. Some say it's not soon enough, depending on, I guess, how you feel about your finances. That's the bottom line to determine what's too soon or not. I dated a woman once that said she liked to go out on dates a lot, and she instantly spoke of the type of money that she typically spends when she goes out on a date. And she up front asked me, could my pockets handle the same? Could I match her date energy? Were we gonna work in that way? Excuse me. And I appreciated that because I instantly knew whether or not we could rock. Then there are those people, we meet in life that at some other point, it matters to them. Classism is real. Whether or not you can hang in the cut, whether sometimes you have people that don't have any money in their pockets and they only want to date people with money. They said we're not going to be two broke people. One of us has got to pull up. The person with money sometimes looks at that person like, oh, no, you need to pull the fuck up, so we can date. The one that's not pulled up is going, no, you need to be up so we can date. There are all kinds of ways that you can look at this. Some people that of tremendous money only want to date people of tremendous money because they don't want to feel like people are with them only for their money, or have an agenda as it relates to their money, you know. There was a time in my life when I was on hard times, I told women, that's if you don't date me now, fuck you later. Because if you really into character and we're just dating, it shouldn't matter to that degree I felt, what's in my pockets until we decide we're going to establish some type of relationship where my pockets affect you. You hear those keywords, my pockets affect you. I can date you and decide after 6 weeks that this is not going to work. So I personally don't feel I need to reveal everything about my pocket depth to someone so soon, you know. But as I said, we've all revealed things as we discuss things, and that's what we're going to do now. Let's get it popping. We go out. People ask us questions sometimes that reveal what we want, about our dreams. What do you want out of life? To mention to someone, oh, next year I'm planning to get XYZ model of car without the price, and they know it costs $150,000, says something about your pockets. If you tell someone, oh, I'm saving for this house in Rockville Center, XYZ, put any state to it, and the person is familiar with the neighborhood and knows the starting price of the house is of $3 million. They kind of have a little bit of idea of the strength of your pockets. You know, if you tell someone during the day, oh, you discussing your dreams. Next year, I'm trying to get my degree and then move out of my mom's house. They kind of have an idea of where you are, at least, not necessarily your pockets, because you can be in your family house saving like crazy. There are a lot of people who have left their parents' houses and just bought a house outright because they had the patience to stay there, instead of leaving at 19 chasing monkey ass. They decided to stay home and save until they were ready to buy a house. So, I don't make the assumption on a dream from someone's house until you begin to discuss your situation. You'll find that out over time. So, when you discuss, if you're in, sometimes, like I said, people are very uncomfortable discussing finances. So there's a way to use other questions, during the date to answer those questions about finance without being so obvious. And, these are some examples for you. These are my fun tips today, talking about dreams, Oh, I'm not familiar with that neighborhood. Where is it? What type of people live there? Reveals things about people. Or if you really get interested in someone you're dating, you can look it up yourself. Look up the neighborhood online. The world has Google now. There's no excuse to be in the dark unless you choose to. I'll tell a person in a minute, Google it. No, Google isn't always right, but it's going to give you more information than you have now. And if you use multiple sources, you're more inclined to get to something that works for you. Hop to 3 spots online. I recommend that to everyone. Don't just Google something and the first fucking answer you see go right in your mouth. But it doesn't mean it's right. 3 doesn't mean it's right, but you got a better chance if you Google the same thing and look at 3 sources that are reputable. Let's keep that in mind, you know? So, you can find out a little bit about people's dreams. They tell you, oh, I have this dream job. I'm currently a XYZ and I'm trying to get to this. That tells you a little bit too. It's not about fishing in people's pockets. The point here is, and I think it's healthy to be a little more in the know about pocket depth because so many relationships fail because of this bullshit. You're dating someone and you find out that they are not like responsible financially, but you on top of the game. Your credit score is 780 and this person's credit score is 480. and you want to buy a house together, but y'all never talked about your credit scores because you're just dating. We make big decisions before we get married, before we get engaged, while we're still dating. We do things financially powerful without even having that conversation with people. The dreams. Okay, we talked about your dreams, what you want, and sometimes that reveals where you are, but not necessarily. Someone might say, next year I want to do XYZ, but nothing in their fucking tree limbs is designed to produce those types of leaves. So, you have to probe a little deeper here. It can't just be about your dreams, because some people dream big and they're not rowed any boats in the stream so that they can reach these dreams. So a part of that dating process becomes a discussion of your reality. Okay, I hear where you want to be. Where are you now? And that can be phrased in a way like, I understand where your dreams are. How are you planning to get there? Where you are now. Where are you now? What else do you need to do to reach your goal? Then people begin to reveal other things about themselves. Well, I'm trying to buy this house in Rockville Center, pick a state, and I've saved over half of the money. You're like, okay, this nigga is responsible. You planning to get the other half in a year because they told you this earlier. I'm planning to purchase this house within the next year. You start revealing things about people without really getting in their business. Being some fucking rubber footwear, but anyway, we're talking about reality here. And that reality has to be revealed more than likely through some conversation, because what people look like and what they have normally don't match. Motherfucker be fly as hell walking down the street. Got on $6,000 worth of clothes and shoes and $6 in the bank. you know. So it's important to discuss that reality as well. Don't just look at it and think you know it. Even the person that you see with the car, driving by you with a car, all of a sudden want to stop and talk to you. You're gonna get them some play, and 3 days later they ain't got that car no more. That's their reality. You gotta talk to people about what's real, not what you see, you know? You ignored a person on the street yesterday because they had on some dirty shoes, but this motherfucker is a billionaire. Money is a motherfucker. Reality is a motherfucker that has nothing to do with the visual in many cases. So that's the next tip for you. Have some conversation about realities. Conversation. Don't sum people up based on what you see or what you think you see. I've heard stories of people who look like the bottom of a shoe, dirty as motherfucking can be, and got 7 digits in the bank. Ain't caring for nothing. I've met people. I've worked for a lot of presidents and reported to a lot of presidents throughout my career because I was a badass at sometimes. I had a difficult time with people telling me what to do, especially if it was wrong. And at some point, I got lucky, and some of these company owners were like, give me that little badass. I guess I reminded them of themselves or whatever. So I got to see that real life, that real money, and watch how they moved with it. And the reality, a lot of them, the people I reported to were in $50 jeans and dirty ass fucking Converses, one of their favorite fucking sneakers for some reason. Dirty ass white pair of sneakers, but they had properties all over this country. They have properties in other countries. They had already set up their third generations with wealth. You know what I'm saying? But to see them on the street, the way people judge each other, they're like, oh, look at that little piece of white trash. Nothing near it, my friends. I know people that are very wealthy, that own homes worth millions of dollars, that don't drive just because they don't feel like it. And people assume because they see them on foot, they must be middle class or trying to hit middle class because they've never had a car And these motherfuckers could buy you and everybody in your family a fucking car and not even blink. So, like I said, with that dating thing, don't get caught up with the flash of all what you think is the reality. Have some conversations about it, because a lot of times what you think wealth is supposed to look like is not what it is. You got these people out here fronting like they're wealthy and they not. They're not even close. This person has goals. This person is actually trying to meet those goals. This person is also tracking those goals in order to know how far they've gone and how far they have to go. You get to pick up things about people's character as well while you're exploring their pocket depth. And, there are people out there who only date for pockets, and I don't judge. Do you? I believe that two people can do whatever the fuck they want. It should be okay to walk up to somebody and say, look, if you don't make at least $3 million, don't talk to me. And that person will look back at you and say, I make double, but let me tell you what you need. That should be okay if that's really your life. Be honest. Tell them like it is, like a fucking resume. Show them little asterisk marks and the requirements that they have to meet to get that job. Getting your monkey ass. That's real talk. I don't think it's a bad thing to tell people what you want, or where you are, even financially, even though it makes some people uncomfortable, you know. Tell them your reality. This is where I am, because some people you fuck with you based on what you were wearing, and they think what you're wearing represents your pockets. You be having on some fly shit, and they want to talk to you, and then they find out you a broke ass brokey, and now they mad at you, and then they act like you faked some shit to make them want you. And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the shit I see, because I'm not into big labels. I'm into nice clothes. There's a difference. But nevertheless, this becomes a part of the reality that you don't have any money. That's why the conversation is necessary, and you can't go on the physical. Anybody can get a cousin or a friend to buy them an expensive top or some expensive shoes. We all got people that like us and love us a lot that get lucky with money and they share that shit. You be the broke motherfucker making $8 an hour, and your cousin done bought you some fucking $800 sneakers. You hear me? That's a whole nother show. This nigga don't think I need the money for food and shelter. As we mentioned earlier, that's a part of that ties into your dreams and your reality. This is where I want to get. This is where I am. And how do I get there? And how do I set milestones and build in lag time for things to go wrong? And when should I take snapshots to get some benchmark numbers for myself, and find the patterns of development within myself and have conversation as I'm dating people to find out if they are able to do this themselves. Okay, you said you got this going on, like we mentioned earlier. You're here now. What's left to do? Do you think you're going to get there? Do you have the resources in place? What have you done? Is this healthy conversation? You can be discussing with someone who wants to get a new job. Like, what you planning to be here in a year? What you got left to do? How are you planning to succeed? It's not an insult to people. It's just, learning people, probing their minds, learning their character. Who are you? A lot of people talk shit and they tell you something. And then when you ask questions, they don't have any fucking answers because all they have is that one sentence dream with no fucking plan. Then that one sentence for the last 10 years. You got to watch out for that too. That's what conversation is about. What are you doing to get there? I want to be a this. I want to be a that. Okay, well, I want to be the fucking this too. I want to be able to go invisible and walk into a vault and come out with $500,000. But how the fuck am I going to do it? That's the bottom line. Take that time during the dating process to find out the complexities of these characters you're talking to. Anybody can talk shit, but like peel back the orange rind and find out what kind of juice is under there. Probe that brain. Do you have a budget? If you're building a company, ask them. What's the harm in asking? Oh, I'm the shit. Make them feel good. I'm trying to be just like you. Can you give me some tips? How did you put together your budget? How did you decide on your expenses? How did you decide on your market area? And sometimes the answer is going to be I'm not there yet, and that's fine, and I don't know yet, and that's fine too. But these are the things that are going to help you not only determine a person's pocket depth, but where they're willing to go. Okay, I see your little bush growing in the ground, but are you planning to make a tree? Like, who are you? I want to find out what you got here. I see the seeds planted. What type of seeds are they? We ask those type of questions. How often do they need water? Do they need sunlight? Don't we do all that shit with plants when you're talking to your friends? You ask them all about them. How often do you have to do this and that? It's just it should be more fucking important when you're dealing with humans in classism and pocket depth. You got all kinds of questions about stupid shit, which are fascinating and I enjoy. Don't get me wrong. I'm using stupid loosely because I love all of those things. I'm simply saying that sometimes we're asking the wrong questions about the wrong things. We're putting too much energy into things that have low impact in our lives and not enough questions about the thing that have the greatest impact. Like who the fuck you gonna lay next to possibly for the rest of your life till you close your eyes forever, and you don't know half the things about this person. And let's go here. That doesn't mean these things won't change over time. So you got to circle back around. Expenses. You dating somebody that got a fly car, fly clothes, take you to fly restaurants, and this motherfucker got like $600,000 in debt to restaurants, to auto dealers, to all kinds of bullshit that you shitted out years ago. That's the one thing about food. Within what, 24 to 48 hours, you shit it out, right? It's done. But you racking up these bills that you got to pay for years for something you shit out like fucking 8 years ago. Y'all got to think about that one at least. If you want to rack up some bills, rack them up with stuff that's still in your life. You owe $60,000 in credit cards because you wanted to. I knew a dude like this. He owed $45,000 in credit cards for dating women that he wasn't getting pussy from at that. Now that's even worse. You dating them to try to get some pussy and you're not scoring, and that's a pretty big damn bill. That's $4,000 a month. Almost that's $900 a week. Buying flowers and taking people to restaurants to try to get something you're not getting. And now you're mad because you say you've over budgeted and you owe money. Hello, somebody. This is a part of dating. You gotta work out that budget. Okay, I make $5,000 a week. I'm only gonna spend $500 a week on ass. Move it into another account. That's your booty, your monkey ass account. Maybe you won't date for 4 weeks so you can accrue $2,000 for some special event. Handle that shit. Don't spend all your money trying to get ass because ass is like a casino game. It really is. You're not guaranteed to win. You're really not. You might lose a lot of money chasing it. So that budget needs to be money you don't mind losing, just like any other luxury, because that's really what it is. It's a luxury, chasing ass. You don't have to spend money to chase ass. You can go to church. You can go to the library. There are a lot of places you can go for free. The park, to chase ass, the alley. But if you're gonna have money involved and you want to date people formally, take people out to dinner and all that things people do, take them to events, then Get that shit, right. And some people are not going to like your budget as well. You want to go out here and take somebody to a place and they go, that's too cheap for them. They look at you funny. Affordability, what can I afford? What type of women and men can I afford? Keep that in mind. Don't be out here with no $10 in your pocket trying to take somebody out that got on fucking $2,000 shoes and then call them a snob when they tell you no. That's not fair. That, my friend, is not fair. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having different affordability levels. I'm calling it right here. A lot of y'all call people high maintenance. They're not high maintenance. You just can't afford it. Because if you could, like I said in the previous episode, if you had it like that, you wouldn't be complaining about shit. Oh, she need her eyebrows done and her nails done. That bitch high maintenance. Cause she need $100 a week. She's now high maintenance. $100 a week, and you're calling her high maintenance. But she's cooking $100 in food out of her cabinet for your ass every week. Y'all really gotta check yourselves and just own that some of y'all just can't afford what the fuck you going after, and you need to be patient until you can, or you need to adjust your budget for a person that fits into it and stop being mad at people for things you can't afford. Need to think about priorities there. That ties right into that. When you can't afford something, you need to step back. You need to step back and let somebody else buy that. It's just like going to the grocery store, nigga. You can't buy steak this week. You gotta buy bologna and get over it. And if you's that mad that you rather have no meat, then don't have it. Don't have a date this week if you don't want to go for free or less money, but you can't afford it. I talked about this, I think last week, or the week before. Know what you can't afford and humble yourself and put yourself in that lane with those people that got that wanted you, that want somebody with the money you got in your pocket. You know? You want to go out here and date a bitch that got $500 budget just for her hair and nails, and you making $200 a week. That's not fair to look at her and tell her she need to strip her hair and nails because you don't have the money. You cannot afford to play that game, so sit the dog down. It's just that simple. Whoever you are. Find you somebody who don't mind what they call them press on nails. Get you somebody that don't mind some E6000 on her fingers. That's who you need to be looking for. You're not looking for a girl with no $200, $300 braids in her hair. Find somebody who's happy with a $30 wig or don't mind her friend braiding her hair. You got to know your priorities if it doesn't fit within your budget, because at the end of the day, you're going to end up very, very broke. And over 50% of relationships fail. That's just marriages. Normally, you got to date a lot to get to a marriage. So you're wasting all this money because you got the wrong priorities and you still ain't got no monkey ass. So, watch how you spend your money when you out on these dates. Make sure you can afford these dates. Make sure you have budgeted for these dates. You know. And don't be rolling up on these dates thinking your money buys you monkey ass or monkey balls, because it doesn't. Unless you've had this discussion already, after I spend this money on you on this date, will you putting out? Don't do it. There's no need to think that money buys you a person. A person's not your property. A lot of y'all do this shit where you go, oh, I spent $200 on you, bitch. You putting the fuck out what? A gun up your ass? I heard a great story yesterday of someone tried to take advantage of this woman, and he didn't know who she was from Adam, and he tried to play her. And she hit a button on her phone, and this nigga was surrounded in less than 3 minutes. with all kinds of motherfuckers that I'm sure had doodle stains in his drawers and pee pee running down his leg. You know what I mean? So, even while you out on these dates and you bouncing with this money, be careful because some of y'all be losing your lives because you're playing yourselves over your money. Your money don't buy you protection from bullets. Watch how you treating people while you're spending your money. I'm not challenging anybody out there, and I'm not, affronting anyone out there. I'm simply saying we could do better when we out on dates with people. There was a time when there was chivalry. You respected people. You met their family to see if you even wanted to become a part of that shit. Because sometimes it's the family that'll make you say no to a person. I dated someone once, unbeknownst to me, until I was way deep in it. They were like the black mob, and they scared the shit out of me, her family. I used to pass by their place literally down in my seat like I was in a slave in the back of a car, getting escorted out of the South and hoping nobody saw me under the blanket. You know, I was crazy about the woman, but her family scared the fuckies bejesus out of me. As I call them, the shit and lootings you know. So you got to take that into account too. And our family had money. They had muscle and money. And luckily, I wasn't the type that was disturbing in a relationship. So, I was good with all of them. But, I had to take all that into consideration, the power against my power, what they had versus what I had. It's not always just about your mate's money. Check out that family wealth because sometimes your mate ain't really your mate. The family telling them what to do. That could play a big role in your life when it comes to pocket depth. You dating a family of wealth and then they gonna say, drop that nigga. That's it. They don't care if she gave you monkey ass the last 500 days in a row. So take that into account while you out here dating. What does your father do? What does your mother do? Not just the person in front of you. Sometimes that's a setup. What do you do? Oh, I'm just chilling. I'm a paralegal. But you failed to tell me your father owns the law firm. And what I'm saying here, do a little probing. That's what these are dates are for. I'm showing y'all questions to ask to learn a little bit more about the people that are sitting in front of you. We already know that you want some. A lot of times that's why you hear, oh, he cute. Oh, she fine. Oh, he fine. Whatever the fucking case. They, them, as I say, I respect all peoples. You normally out on a date because someone's attractive to you and you want to take it further in some category which is normally physical, a mix of the physical and the mental. Let's just keep it real. You're out here looking for, as we discussed in the last episode, compatibility, you know, and a part of that is the pockets. Do we rock that way? Okay, you make $4 million a year. I only make two. Is that gonna work? You make enough money to afford this whole family. I barely make enough money to take care of myself. Is that gonna work? You know, we make equal money and we both like being in charge and our money buys us power. Are we gonna bump heads? And not just about have-nots, it's about the haves too. There can be problems when both of you have money. Both of you are so used to being independent and doing what the fuck you want. And now you got to acquiesce to each other, and neither one of you wants to. You know, these are the conversations to be had. How do you like to use your money? Do you invest your money back in yourself? Do you have any hobbies? Do you have anything to help? Do you take any classes to build your mind? Your body, anything. There's so many ways to use money. Do you invest your money into the community? What do you use? What do you support? Do you fund health organizations? Do you give back to the children? You know? Me personally, these things make me happy. I try to budget a little money every year to give back to something. If I can't do it in money, I do it in time. I do it in labor. Because it all comes back to the same thing. We all out here doing the same thing, trying to enjoy what we're doing, understand why we're here. right? Have a good time, right? Isn't that what it's all about? You're trying to understand why you're on this earth. Do I have a mission? What is my mission? You know, am I supposed to have a mate? If so, how am I going to get a mate? I'm going to date, right? Unless you have a prearranged relationship, which some people do. But outside of that, we go out here like dogs and we sniff each other's ass till we find a match. And then, oh, you think you found your match, I should say. Oh, yeah, we will call it a match because matches don't have to be permanent. We didn't label it. You found your match for today, you know? Someone asked me once in front of a woman I was dating, is that your soulmate? And I said, for now. The woman didn't get mad at all. And the person who asked, who happened to be a doctor, he thought it was hilarious and he kept looking at my mate for a reaction, but she had none because she understood what I was saying. Nothing's promised to us, and it is for now. We're all here temporarily. Whether I'm loving this person to death, do us part or not, it's still only for now. But while you're doing your for now, search for compatibility in those important areas. Think about the role that money plays in your life. Are you able to do what you want? Um, Money for some doesn't have the same weight as for others. There are people out here who live under $50,000 that are happier than people who are living over $500,000, because of the mind, the state of mind, and with the soul's journey. It's not always about money, something material, something that we've assigned value to, and we've created some type of pricing structure in order to use that to barter for a lot of things that we want in life. We fluctuate that. Some of us have that big pocket today, and some of us have that little pocket today. But at the end of the day, everybody's out here looking for some way to get what they want. There's another system called bartering, but we're not going to go there today. They can get you just as much or more than money. But today we're talking about pocket depth and dating. While you out there on your journey, enjoying your dating, try not to be taken for a ride, try to spend your money wisely. And, make sure you're doing things you want to do for yourself too, not just for your date. Don't be going to a million places in a year and you don't like any of the food. You just doing all this because you want pussy. Because you got to keep taking this person to these places if this shit gets real. Fuck yourself. Like I said, at the end of the day, you're looking for some compatibility in all of this. You're looking for a pocket depth that matches you and the person that you're dating, where they enjoy where your money takes them and you enjoy where their money takes you and things you do together. And on that note, we over our time. We in about 4, 6 minutes more. Y'all know I get excited talking to y'all. There's so much, to all of this stuff, but God willing, we got time to talk more about time because y'all know what time it is and y'all know why. It's time to go because we all got things to do. This has been Cass Allen.